Okay, here are some basic specs about the camera. It has a 24.3 megapixel CMOS sensor. It's a full frame camera and has a 100% viewfinder. If you use it in DX mode, which is the crop sensor mode, it has a 97% viewfinder. It has an autofocus motor, so you can focus if you have any old lenses, such as like the D lenses. It has a maximum shutter speed of 1/4000th of a second. It has a maximum flash sync speed of 1/200th of a second. It can shoot 5.5 frames per second. It also has 39 autofocus points, and 9 of which are cross type. It also offers a pop-up flash and it works well with the Nikon CLS system. So you can command various speed lights using your pop-up flash as a commander, and you can even do high-speed sync with that. Some of the video features: it offers full HD video at 1080p at 24, 25, and 30 frames per second, and for some slow motion shots at 60 frames per second at 720p. It has a 3.2-inch LCD monitor. It has a mic in and headphone jack, and it offers HDMI uncompressed video if you buy an external device. It also takes the same battery as the Nikon D800 and D7000, and it also shares the same processor as the D800 and the D4, which is the XP3 processor. And it weighs about 1.8 pounds or 760 grams. And those are some of the basic specs. Okay, so those are some of the basic specs of the camera. Here are some of my personal thoughts and what I think of the camera. I wrote some notes down here, so if you see me looking down, it's because I just want to make sure I cover the points that I wanted to cover. Anyway, as far as one of the most important features, of this camera, besides the build quality and the way it feels and handles, which I all love, is the image quality. That's like the most important thing to me. And the dynamic range and the high ISO capability of this camera are awesome. You can see a prior video of mine where I showed some sample images of the high ISO, and they're awesome. You have usable images really up to 12,600, I think, or whatever, some kind of crazy ISO. But for me, they're usable and they're great, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get this full frame camera. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm very pleased with the image quality. It also offers, the crop sensor mode. So if those of you that are looking to get into a full frame camera but don't have a whole lot of FX lenses, it does offer a DX mode, which I think goes down to 10 megapixel. So you can still use your DX lenses on the camera. I did the opposite. I was prepping for FX, so I bought only FX lenses because I knew eventually I wanted to move to FX. So when I got this camera, all my lenses just were that much better. So I was really happy with that. It's like it made all my FX lenses awesome. I'm able to use it to its full potential now that I can see all the outside edges of the glass. Also, I wrote a note here that the 35mm 1.8 G lens works in FX mode on the D600. It just has vignetting on the outside, which you can kind of crop in and get rid of that, but you can still use it in FX mode on the camera, which is awesome. The build quality, it feels solid to me. It feels good in the hands. It's got a bigger grip than my Nikon D7000. It doesn't feel plastic at all, even though I know it's not a full magnesium alloy body. It's just on the top and on the back, but it is all weather sealed. It has the same weather sealing as the Nikon D800, where it has all the rubber gaskets in the same spots. It's just not all metal, which is fine with me. I still have my first DSLR, which is the D90, and I'll shoot time lapse with that, leave it out at night, all night, and that just has a full plastic body, and it's totally fine. It works perfect still, and I still use it. So for those of you that want that rugged metal feel, then you might want to look at getting the D800 or maybe a used D700. Maybe you can still find new D700s out there because those have full magnesium alloy bodies. But for me, the image quality and high ISO on this camera is better than the D700.
and that's just not my opinion. It's just better. But the D700 is an awesome, amazing camera, and if those of you that have it, I don't know if I would upgrade unless you wanted all the video features, because the D600 has a lot of video features. It's packed. So that's a personal choice. But for another $900 US dollars to jump to the D800, I'd rather settle for the body that comes with the partial magnesium alloy body and the better image quality. Let's see. You know, the camera feels well balanced. Last night I was out downtown with my 24-70 2.8 on there, and it felt great. It was heavy, so I was almost kind of glad that it wasn't any heavier, because I was just hand holding the camera. I didn't have a strap. I was just taking some random shots, and you know, it felt heavy after a while. I was walking around for about an hour. It was wearing on me a little bit. Also, you know, the video features are really nice. So I took a couple of video shots here and there just to test it out. I mean, that's really nice to be able to switch to video and get like slow motion or you know, full HD video quality is awesome. Another thing I really like about the camera is it offers the U1 and U2 modes, which is user 1 and user 2 modes on there, similar to the D7000. So I set mine up where I use aperture priority and auto ISO on my U1, and on U2 I set it up when I want to do flash. So when I click it over to U2, it automatically changes all my settings and all my menus. So it changes my shutter speed to 1/200th of a second, which is my max sync speed, just as a starting point. It changes my aperture to where I want it, and it changes my auto white balance. I have that dialed in to the Kelvin, and it changes it all ready to go, so I can just switch them back and forth. One of the other features that I don't hear talked about is the auto ISO feature of this camera. So because high ISO performance of this camera is so good, you can use the auto ISO feature. And in the D7000, it also has the auto ISO feature. But so what you do is you set it to the minimum shutter speed that you want it to go to before it starts changing the ISO, right? So if you set your max ISO, let's say at 3200, your minimum shutter speed at 1/60th. So what it'll do is, if you put on, let's say, aperture priority, if your shutter speed drops below 1/60th, which is the minimum you set, it'll start changing the ISO accordingly to get the proper exposure before it drops your shutter speed. Well, the D600 also has this feature, but it has an auto minimum shutter speed. So what it's doing is it knows what type of lens you have on there. So if you have Nikon glass, I mainly buy Nikon glass. So it knows what lens is on the camera. So as you zoom, let's say you have a 24-70 on there, as you zoom, it'll change your minimum shutter speed. So let's say you zoom all the way to 70, your minimum shutter speed will jump up to a 60th or somewhere about there before it changes the ISO. Or if you go back down to 24, it will lower your minimum shutter speed requirement. So it's smart, because, you know, like the rule of thumb is you want to avoid blur in your photos. You want to have the same shutter speed as your focal length. So if you have a 200mm lens, you want to be a minimum of 1/200th of a second to avoid blur. And the longer your focal length, the higher your shutter speed should be to avoid blur, and so on. Well, this auto ISO feature will fix that. It'll just know. Oh, another feature that I want to talk about is the D600 also has a built-in intervalometer. So does the D7000, so does, I believe, the D700, the D800, D4. A lot of the upper level Nikon cameras all have built-in intervalometers. So that's really nice. And if you do time lapse, that's really helpful. But it also has an auto time lapse feature, where after you're done taking your time lapse, it'll stitch all the photos together inside the camera and create your time-lapse video inside the body of the camera. That's cool. So in conclusion, I'm very happy with the camera. It has wonderful image quality, great highest ISO performance, dynamic range is great, and it was a perfect opportunity for me, for someone shooting DX, to move into the FX format. I didn't want to get a D800 me being an enthusiast and not getting paid for photography, just something I love to do, spending $3,000 for a body was a little bit too much. I guess I could have gone with like a used D700, but I wanted some video, and the D700 didn't do video. So when this came up, it was just a great chance for me to do that. And I think any of you who are thinking making a jump from DX to FX would be very happy with this camera. You know, there's something about shooting full frame. It's awesome. I'm really enjoying it, and those are my final thoughts. I think Nikon did a really good job with the D600. If you guys had any questions, please leave them at the comments below.